why are we forcing Black women and Black men to be contained in a box that mainstream has decided is okay? So the Crown Act says we're not going to do it like that anymore. We're going to rock our natural hair. We're going to buy as much product as we can. We're going to try and get these curls under control and let them explode and be beautiful.
Hey, I'm Ashley Jackson, and this is Push the Next Generation, your Gen Z-coded guide to power and politics. Today, we're decoding the U.S. government. So let's get into some news updates, and then we'll start our interview. I fear the news highlights won't be quick today, but we've lived about a year and a week, so please bear with my summary. The House race results are in, so here's a quick civics recap. The U.S. government has three branches: the legislative, which makes the laws, the executive, which enforces them, and the judicial, which interprets them. The legislative branch is known as Congress and has two chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. As of now, in November 2024, Republicans hold majorities in both chambers, so they control Congress. They also control the executive branch with the incoming administration led by President-elect Donald Trump, and the judicial branch, including the Supreme Court, leans conservative, with most justices appointed by Republican presidents. Trump may even have the chance to appoint more judges as terms end during his presidency. With Republican control across all three branches, some are calling this a trifecta, but it's more like a superfecta. Our system of checks and balances was designed to prevent any one branch from holding too much power, so this political season is going to be interesting. But also I have to shout out the historic wins by candidates from marginalized backgrounds in this election season, from local to federal government. Yay. Now let's go over some of Trump's latest cabinet picks. President-elect Trump has chosen Representative Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General, and Gaetz is a polarizing figure due to past allegations, including an accusation that he paid for sex with a minor, which he denied, and the Justice Department also investigated him for alleged sex trafficking and obstruction of justice, but ultimately declined to pursue charges when he resigned his post. Gaetz' nomination has stirred debate, even among some Republicans. Now, Trump's choice for Secretary of Defense is former Fox News host Pete Hegseth is a vocal conservative known for his media presence and strong support of Trump's policies. For Director of National Intelligence, Trump is considering former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard has no direct intelligence experience and is controversial for her views on Russia and Syria, which differ from the U.S. foreign policy norm. Trump's campaign co-chair, Susie Wiles, will serve as White House Chief of Staff. Now, this makes her the first woman to hold the position. And while the role does not require Senate confirmation, it is a highly influential role within the administration. Now, Senator Marco Rubio is Trump's pick for Secretary of State. Rubio and Trump famously clashed during the 2016 primaries, but they appear to have set aside their differences for this appointment. Trump has also named Tom Homan, who was acting director of ICE during his first term, to serve as border czar in his administration, focusing on immigration and border security. He's also tapped two billionaires, Tesla CEO Elon Musk and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, to lead the newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Yes, that sounds just like Dogecoin, focused on reducing wasteful federal spending. Finally, for Secretary of Health and Human Services, Trump has selected Robert F. Kennedy Jr., known for his anti-vaccine stance. Trump has said Kennedy will target food and drug companies to make America great and healthy again, though Kennedy's vaccine views have sparked considerable controversy. These picks combine loyal supporters with unconventional choices, showing Trump's intent to challenge Washington norms. Some Republicans have raised concerns, calling certain nominations controversial and perhaps even unconfirmable. Trump has also hinted he may use recess appointments to bypass Senate approval, sparking constitutional questions about the start of his second term. Now, for some non-Trump related and international news, in New Zealand, Parliament was briefly suspended on Thursday, November 14th, after Maori members disrupted a vote on a controversial bill by performing a haka, protesting changes to a 184-year-old treaty between the British and the Maori. The satirical news site The Onion won an auction to acquire Alex Jones's InfoWars following a defamation settlement after he falsely called the Sandy Hook Elementary School massacre a hoax. The Onion's bid, backed by the families of the Sandy Hook victims, also includes an advertising deal with every town for gun safety. New data from the State of the Climate 2024 report shows that this will be the hottest year on record, hitting 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, a key threshold under the Paris Agreement. Finally, an alarming global trend in women's rights. Iraq is legalizing marriage for girls as young as 9. Libya is enforcing Taliban-like restrictions on women's dress and movement. Afghanistan has forbidden women from speaking to each other. And Iran is reportedly detaining women who protest morality laws. When patriarchal oppression persists, we must resist. Now that we're all caught up, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Push the Next Generation, recommend it to a friend, follow on socials at Push the Next Generation Pod, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast, please. Okay, now that the begging is over, let's get into it. This week, I'll be speaking with Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove, an advocate for justice and families who represents California's 37th Congressional District in L.A. County. The Congresswoman is currently a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and also serves as vice-ranking member of the House Natural Resources Committee. In addition to her advocacy work, Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove brings to Congress nearly a decade of experience serving the people of Los Angeles in local office and the state legislature. In 2013, Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove was appointed to the Los Angeles County Commission on Children and Families, and in 2015, she was elected to the Los Angeles Community College Board. She successfully ran for California State Assembly in 2018 and California State Senate in 2021. Her public service record proves that she is a strong voice for justice in our most vulnerable community members in the House of Representatives. Disclaimer, this interview was recorded before the U.S. presidential election, but I felt that the Congresswoman's insights should exist in their totality within the context of our initial conversation. Simply, there were too many gems to cut. Welcome, Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove. I'm very excited to be speaking with you today on Push the Next Generation. Thank you so much for coming on. And we'll start with kind of just, I think, your background, make sure people can get acclimated with you. And I know that you are from Chicago. So I'd just love to know about your journey from Chicago to LA and like how that's impacted your political journey.
So, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. Lots of pressure because you're so fabulous and I'm loving this natural hair.
It's natural, all right. It's doing something today.
Curls, people don't understand. Curls can get dangerous.
Yes.
So from Chicago, I was actually born in Lincoln Park, but raised in Hyde Park and on the South Side. And my first taste of politics was actually helping my grandmother get Harold Washington elected mayor of Chicago. I was a little person, and she was deeply in awe of Reverend Jesse Jackson. And so I also remember sitting in the living room, watching him on television at the DNC when he was running. And so Operation Push is such an important part of Chicago and of the legacy of Black folks in Chicago. Just had to say that because y'all are special to me.
The feeling is mutual.
Oh, thank you. And then ended up in Los Angeles to go to college and sort of kind of never left. Fell in love with the city and was really touched by the riots that happened in '93 and how to be part of reconnecting Los Angeles and neighborhoods back to one another. And so was in the nonprofit art world, was in the childcare advocacy space, and then met up with a woman who actually hired me to work at a childcare development center, organizing providers to fight for affordable wages in childcare and to remind folks how important childcare is to the economy. And then she ran for office. I helped her, and the rest is kind of history.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I am correct in saying that you're a Trojan, right?
You are correct.
Okay, I too am currently a Trojan, and so I was like, there's a lot of overlap there. Fight on. I'm like, sorry to the Bruins that are listening.
Thank
Listen, you know, it is what it is. Our school is our school.
You got to keep it real.
Very much so. Well, my follow-up would be, you know, as someone who served in multiple levels of the government, how do you see the interplay between local, state, and federal policies in addressing issues that are important to me and my generation?
So I think the saying is true. All politics are local. And at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your street is clean, that your utilities work, that the trash is being picked up, that you can get in and out of your garage and go where you need to go without having the potholes, you know, kill your car. Having said that, local has a relationship with the county and the state and the federal government. And in an ideal world, all of those things work together. I see it as a layered cake. You know, the federal government is the baseline. There are federal protections that impact everyone, regardless of the state you live in, your age, your race, your gender, your income. And those are basic protections that we are afforded, like the right to vote, like the right to get an abortion until Donald Trump came to town, like the right to be able to work in a facility or at a job and have basic workplace protections. Then at the state level, you have those things and also additional things like maybe certain taxes or how the state helps you access your health care or get unemployment or find a job. And then at the county level, it gets even more granular. Social services, and access to housing. And then at the local level, it gets very, very granular, like your street cleaning, like your garbage, parks. So they should all be working together. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, it's really important that we all speak up and raise our hand and say, yo, this is not working, fix this, so that we can all get alerted to the issue and then figure out the role we play in the solution.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear and have it laid out so beautifully, because I think one of the things we're coming across in terms of like misinformation just generally that's so rampant on the internet is that like a lot of people just don't know how the government works. And like, do I blame the education system for that? Perhaps, which is a whole other conversation. But in not knowing how the government works, you don't know how it can and cannot advocate for you and in what capacities you need to come in and who you actually need to be fussing at, for lack of a better term, about what issues you're facing. And so like, I think we have an issue with like, okay, I want to hold my representatives accountable, but nobody knows which representative they're supposed to be holding accountable. So, if you're having issues with your street cleanings, I hope now you know where to go. But so I guess to that point, is there anything that you think is widely misunderstood about your job that you'd love to clarify?
People do seem to think if you call your congressperson, she or he will fix every single thing. So actually, we have constituents that call us and we have to tell them that isn't a federal issue. It's a local issue. But then my job is to connect them to their representative at the local level and also let that representative know what the issue is and how they can help. But one of the largest misconceptions is that we are responsible for everything. And then there's also this misconception that you can fix something right away. So, for example, I've heard, or that something is only a problem for 1 year. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine who was saying, well, Biden is the one responsible for taking away abortion rights. So, well, why do you say that? That doesn't make any sense. It was under Trump that the Dobbs decision came out. It was, Trump was the one that found these Supreme Court justices who worked to overturn it. And they said, yes, but that was last year. So now this is this year, and Biden should be able to fix it. Why is he not fixing it? And that's a huge misconception about how the Supreme Court works. And then what happens when they make a decision and who can actually change it. So those are, I think, maybe are two good examples of misconceptions that are out there.
Yeah, I think it's really, really helpful to clarify, because we're really in a time now where I wake up in the morning and I never thought I'd say this, but like, I think I start my day now with Instagram threads, which is just a weird place to start my day.
Okay, I need to know why.
Well, because I don't use the Deadbird app, and so I have to get like, I have to get my information, and I guess part of it, I think, is like this Gen Z coded way of like staying in community with people. And so for some reason I go on there and like, I think I've curated my platform to really give me like the news in distilled ways from different content creators I trust. But it's just a very, I don't, as a Gen Zer, and I know that a lot of people in my generation would agree, I don't have like cable in my house. So if I want to watch the news, I have to use an app to get to CNN, to get to MSNBC, and I'm not doing all of that at 7 a.m. So to know what happened the night before, I'm either like checking Politico or I'm looking at threads. But with that, there is, I think I've seen an influx in the last 2 weeks of people coming on and just saying some of the craziest things and just lying on people's jobs, on people's histories with their jobs. And so now it's like, it's becoming a little stressful to start my day with Thread, so I may have to like start with meditation. But I think now we can see that like this is the space where a lot of people are getting their news. Even having been a DNC creator, like people are looking to creators to get their information and hoping that they can trust them. And so making sure that we're also armed with the right information, I think, is like half the battle, for sure.
There's also there's a barrage of information, and for me, it's overstimulating. And,
For sure.
and you wake up and you want to feel one kind of way. I certainly don't like to wake up and read stuff that's so crazy that my blood is boiling, and then I don't know how to recalibrate and get set for the rest of the day. So my feed, I also don't have cable. And I'm glad that I don't. So I try to read a lot. But yes, my feed has also been curated to be very positive. I'm looking at animals and I'm looking at fashion and vintage, because the stress of the misinformation out there is really daunting and you feel so isolated.
Oh, 100%. We're really in this siloed, just weird, I would say the polarization now, like even on a level, like I'm in film school and we talk a lot about like this notion that there used to be like eventized TV. You'd go home, you'd make sure that you were home at a certain time, your whole family would get together and the world was watching and America was watching all at once. And even down to TV, we're not watching the same things anymore. They're with the exception of the Olympics and the Super Bowl, like there's not really as much eventized TV. You can see like with the Bridgerton, okay, like people are all watching in unison, but there's not this notion of like, I'm in community, everyone in my apartment building, I know my neighbors. And with that comes like a level of isolation that I think is just driving us all a little crazy. But to shift gears a little bit, I would just love for you to walk our audience through a day in the life of a congresswoman. Because I think, again, people just are not in the know about, like, we know, okay, this is a congresswoman, I know that I'm in so-and-so's district, but like, what are they actually doing? How are they advocating for me? Yeah.
The fun thing is some people also don't even know what district they're in. I walk up to folks all the time. They're like, oh, I'm in your district. Oh, no, it's so-and-so's. Because as you know, the lines for districts are not square boxes. Yeah. So the life of a congresswoman depends on where I am. If I'm in my district, which I'm in now, it's getting up, exercising in the morning, feeding the cats, making sure my son gets off to school, and then checking emails, getting right. God forbid I have a lot of work to do on the outside. Then I have to try and get the hair working and then the makeup, because you don't want people to see you looking raggedy and dragging. And then as a woman, trying to figure out what kind of outfit you can put on that will allow you to last the entire day visiting a whole different kind of constituency. You'll be talking to young people in the morning, and then seniors in the afternoon, and then business folks in the evening. So what will allow you to be comfortable? And I know men don't really think about that, but it is something that you have to think about as a woman. And then you're having meetings with constituencies in your office, your problem solving on casework that comes into your office. We actually have helped constituents get $2 million back from the federal government, like the IRS and unemployment. So doing a lot of that. And then going across the district and visiting folks, and then also visiting people who are coming here from Washington, D.C. So we've had the Assistant Secretary HUD come. We're having the Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra come. They need to see the district. They need to see where the money is going that they have in their department, and they need to see what's not working. This year, a lot of the events also include giving out money. So I've given out almost $13 million in grants directly to community organizations in the district. Amity Foundation, for example, helps folks who are incarcerated live on the outside as they get ready to re-enter community. CASA actually helps folks by identifying special advocates for young people who are in the foster care system and need help translating all of the bureaucratic systems that they have to engage with. And then you come home and you cook and you check on your family, and then you do some evening Zooms, you go out for evening meetings, and then you come back home and then you prep for the next day.
That is insane. Like, I think, like, when I think about my grad school life, like, that just sounds absolutely wild. And I think there's a lot of respect that I think often people just don't have for your role because they really don't know what you're doing. And I think in spaces where, especially when we're really disenfranchised and you feel like nobody's looking out for you, not knowing what people are doing, I really like it's all down to misinformation some days for me and like disinformation and all the things because like now that I know, when I knew, but like now that I know, I'm able to say like I know that my representative is looking out for my best interest. And so you can walk through the world with a different level of like someone cares. So thank you for caring. But yeah, I guess my next set of questions are kind of more about your work before we get to Congress. So the first one would be how has your experience in local government, such as on the Los Angeles Community College Board, informed your approach to national education policy? And as a grad student, I really, really, really care about this.
Yeah. So, I love my experience on the community college board here because I put on training wheels when I was elected to that office. It's the largest community college district in the country. There are 9 campuses spread across all of LA County. It was very difficult actually for me to win the seat because there hadn't been a Black woman elected in 15 years.
Wow.
It's an at-large seat. And so you have to get everyone in Los Angeles County to vote for you. So I think my name and people being confused about if I was a man or a woman or what ethnicity I was helped in a way. You get to the community college and you're thinking, ooh, it's all about education. But it's also about business. There are so many vendors that are contracting with the community colleges to help them operate. And then it's also about construction. You're trying to build new facilities. Now community colleges are trying to build housing. So how do you make sure that you have a faculty that's diverse? How do you make sure that you have staff that are diverse? How do you make sure that you have a vendor pool that is diverse and representative of the community where that district is? And I worked a lot to make sure that all of those pools were as diverse as possible. I also came in when Trump had just gotten elected, so we were doing a lot to support the immigrant community. They were afraid to go to school. They kept thinking ICE was going to show up and arrest them and deport them. And then we worked a lot with cost of living issues. I talked to so many young people who had been in the foster care system, who didn't have a grasp of financial literacy and were running out of money. And the grant money they were getting wasn't a lot in the first place. And so working with the district and also with the state to figure out ways to make sure that our young students had as much money as we could give them and that we were helping them figure out ways to stretch it as long as possible. And it also taught me how to count. You want to pass a bill, you got to get the majority of the people on your side. And so how do you figure out ways to build coalitions and consensus so that the things that you want to see happen can actually get passed?
That's really cool and really important. And so during your time in the California State Senate, I'd love to know, I mean, about some of the key initiatives you championed and which ones you really still believe are relevant today.
Okay, let's go backwards. So right now in California, there is a Proposition 6 on the ballot, which says that slavery and involuntary servitude is unconstitutional. We now have that. We still have that in California's constitution that says slavery and involuntary servitude are okay. I'm so grateful that we are now able to vote on that. When I was in the Senate, I tried to pass that very same bill to put it on the ballot, and it died. And I'm still very salty about it because, Democrats killed it, to be honest about it. And I think it's incredibly important. There are other states like Louisiana and Colorado and Mississippi who have passed these constitutional amendments. California should as well. And if we get enough, we can ratify it and take out the 13th Amendment in our federal constitution that would nationally say slavery and involuntary servitude are wrong. Why is it in our constitution? Because if you've seen the movie, you know that if you are incarcerated, you have absolutely zero rights and you can be treated like a slave. So that's something that I worked on before I left. I did a lot of work in the criminal justice space, making sure that prosecutors couldn't go rogue. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act came out of some bills that I did at the state level. Having the Crisis Act get signed into law so that if you have a mental health care emergency or a poverty emergency, you can call another number instead of 911, or you can call and social workers will come out to help you and not police to arrest you. And then we did a lot of work in the climate space. I'm very interested in reusable textiles and glass and fabrics because we think we should be saving the planet and loving her. And so worked on a number of bills in that space as well. And I have taken a lot of those ideas with me to Congress.
Amazing. And speaking of Congress, as a Congresswoman, you've prioritized land, economic justice, art, and democracy, LEAD. And I'd love to know how these pillars guide your legislative agenda.
Nothing happens by me if it does not connect to L.E.A.D. So land, how do we celebrate and protect our environment? E, economic development. It's also, how we get some more money. Because I'm trying to create some generational wealth myself. I'm certainly trying to lower the cost of living, and I want folks to be able to make some money and put it in their pockets. So I have a lot of young people on my staff, and they, in DC especially, the first of the month, maybe the first 10 days of the month, they're like, oh, Congresswoman, we don't have to go with you. You can go to that event by yourself. By the third week, they're like, hey, Congresswoman, can I go with you to that event? I'll go with you to all the events. And I say, oh, I know what this is about. And of course, yes, you can. But they're saying, by the third week, my money is running low. And if I go with you to the event, then I can eat because there'll be tons of food at these events. So I am crystal clear about the cost of things, of living, and what we can be doing to address it. So that's the E. The A is arts. You cannot wake up and go through a day without being touched by arts. I mean, we were just talking about our feeds. That's very cultural. And then D, democracy, rights, protecting your rights, making sure you have your rights, making sure everybody has the same rights, making sure that everybody is treated the same with those rights.
That is so powerful. And I feel like even hearing that distilled down, like that's, I think, a lot of what our generation, and I know that we're leaning heavily in the liberal space. So like those are the things that I think are really, really important to us. So knowing that we have a champion, guys, is really, really nice to hear. And so following up on more of your work in Congress, I am aware that you helped to establish the Global African Diaspora Initiative, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know just generally your role in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and just like global issues that concern young voters, like how you are navigating the international and the domestic of it all.
So it's such a big thing. And when I got to Congress, they said, oh, Congresswoman Barbara Lee has been championing this, but, she's going to go to the Senate. And so can you work on this with her and let her guide you during her last term? So I've just been so grateful to have her as a mentor. Really, it's about leveraging the power of the Black Caucus. There are 60 members in the Black Caucus now, the largest we've ever been, to talk about and to elevate issues that impact the African diaspora, which includes the Caribbean, which also includes a Western Hemisphere, because we are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And we do not talk about Africa enough. I had a meeting with the Ethiopian community. I had a meeting with the Nigerian community. I've had a meeting with the Ghanaian community. And they're always saying, how come we seem to be left out of the discussions? Especially now, I can't turn on my Spotify without listening to, Thames or Burna Boy or just some kind of, yes, anyway, yes. So that's very important to me. And you can talk about the arts, but you can also talk about the economics. And you can also talk about the power that is Africa. 70% of that continent is under the age of 30. And it is the fastest growing continent of all of them. And so I think we have an obligation to think a little more critically about the continent and what they need. And then also recognizing that there are Black folks or Afro descendants everywhere. You know, I've been to Mexico, I've been to Colombia, I've been throughout Western Hemisphere, South America, and we are there. You know, obviously we're in Africa too. And so how do we talk about all of these groups and find some commonalities, you know, to help us in our collective strength and power and struggle?
That's super, super, super important. And I think like I went to Spelman for 2 years, the last part of my undergrad. And like one of the first courses we take is on the diaspora and like how important it is to make sure that you are conscious of like the world in which you live. And like, of course, that takes me to the coconut tree, but like knowing the context from which you come from is really, really important. And also to that point, making sure that you are in tune with the fact that like Africa is here. I think sometimes in America we're really keen on being like I mean as a kid like it was like I live in California, California must be the world. Like I live in America, America must be the world. And like making sure that you have this global view that I think actually a lot of other places, Europe, like there's a global understanding that I think sometimes as Americans we lack for probably quite a few reasons, but just making sure that we know that those touch points are being addressed because it's really important. And I do have a lot of African friends. I have a lot of Afro-descendant friends, and just making sure that we know that our needs are being addressed, which is why I'm really grateful to the CBC and people like you who are understanding that, like, yeah, I have peers everywhere. Like we show up in a myriad of ways, and issues that affect Gen Z voters in America are also affecting Gen Z voters in Africa, in any different country. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are playing at the Mets. We were watching the game last night. They have all these commercials, and there's this one commercial, and everyone is speaking Spanish, and they are from different parts of the world, talking about how important baseball is to them, because obviously there are players that come from so many Spanish-speaking countries. That is a conversation we should be having, right? You go to take a capoeira class, or you go to a store and you buy this great African print, or you're listening to your music, or you're going to hang out with your friends at a concert, or you're going to try a new restaurant. Well, there's African culture, interspersed in all of those activities. And so we shouldn't be taking it for granted. And then we also shouldn't be living myopically without recognizing that we're part of a global community.
Absolutely. So another Congress question, I mean, most of them probably will be, I'd love to know what strategies you employ specifically to stay connected with the concerns and perspectives of Gen Z voters. I feel like you're very online. I wouldn't say chronically online because you have a whole job, but just like I see you on the internet. So like, I presume that that's one of the ways, but are there other ways that you are engaging Gen Z voters and our specific concerns?
Yeah. So, I was talking to some friends of mine, and they say, oh, Gen Z, they don't care about what's going on around the world. And I'm like, no, actually, when I talk to all my Gen Z people, that's what they want to talk about. And so I think that's why Gaddy, to your earlier question, is so important. That's why talking about the immigrant community and immigration reform is also so very important. So I surround myself with a lot of Gen Zs, and then I love the fact that I'm with Gen Zs who then are trying to be millennials. They're like, oh, I'm too old. I'm like, dude, you're still a Gen Z. What are you talking about? So I love that people are trying to figure out what part of the Gen Z spectrum they're in. I'm like, you are a baby, Lord have mercy. But so I think, we've tried I have town halls all the time where I'm saying, hey, let's work with young folks. I have an advisory committee, and Gen Zers are on that. And I'm actually checking in with them on the regular. What am I not doing? What am I missing? Where should I be going? And sometimes you're going just to be present. You're not going to be a celebrity or, talk and take up space. You're actually going to listen. I think the Gen Z population has actually pushed government to be more progressive. I think the whole federal push to legalize marijuana, Gen Zers. I think the student loan relief, that was Gen Zers who said the rent is too damn high and the student loan debt is too damn high, and I don't want to be a renter my entire life. I actually would like to buy a home with some grass. So those those policies all happened because of the Gen Z community. You know, the Biden-Harris administration now has the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. That was the result of a Gen Zer in Congress who put
Shout out to
that as
Maxwell.
exactly, my
Yeah.
friend, who pushed it as legislation. And then it got turned into an actual, you know, implemented policy on the spot by the president and the vice president. So those examples, I think, I mean, I go to Trojan Democrats, I go to, you know, the Bruin Democrats. It's also about getting into community and meeting folks where they are. That's why I do a lot of art related activities. My husband's nephew has the Ebony Beach Club, and, you know, we do Black Market Flea. So we try to be where Gen Z community is so that we can actually celebrate the diversity that is the Gen Z community, and then also hear from them, you know, what's on their minds. Because I walk in and I'm like, hey, I think they want to talk about X. And they're like, no, boo, we trying to talk about Y. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
No, that is so, so, so important. One, I would just underscore the fact that like you have the best staff. I know quite a few of them in the Gen Z space. I can echo and assure everyone she is telling the truth. She has a lot of Gen Z staffers, and I think that it shows up in the work that she does as well, because we are quick to be like, actually, this is what's happening here. And even like I joke with my friends in the entertainment industry, like in the TV writing space, like there's always like, it'll be like a group of like 50-year-old white men, no shade to them, who are like writing for like a 20-year-old Black woman. And it's like, if I was in the room, I would tell you I don't use vibe within that context. So like there, I had like a discussion with my mother yesterday. She's like, it's a vibe. And I was like, you're not using that one right. I understand where you were going with it, but like there are so many generational nuances, and like having someone who not only is making sure that you're listening to the voices, but also just like having them there. I think like a lot of times I would see that a lot of elders kind of look to the younger generations, and not that you're an elder, correction, not that you're an elder, but just in terms of other people. Like obviously my dad is a lot older, and I'm like in spaces, and not him particularly, but just people who look at us like we're just not engaged, not interested, and have nothing to add to the discourse and conversation. And so oftentimes we just don't even get to be in the room. And that was part of the impetus of this podcast for me, because like I'm in the room because I'm so-and-so's daughter, but sometimes I'm the only one in the room. So like all of Gen Z's voice falls on me to be like, I'm advocating and I do it in the ways that I can, but like our voices are important. We matter. And so having people like you who are like, no, you're old enough to work here. Like you're old enough for me to listen to your opinions. And like, I think that that's super, super valuable. And we don't see it enough, in my opinion.
Well, it's also, you know, I just have to acknowledge everything that you said, because, you know, I feel like that when I was in the state Senate, I was the only Black woman in the California State Senate. It's just this California's a population of 40 million people. So why is there only one of us? And then, of course, people say, well, you're speaking for all of Black women. So you're in rooms and people may say, well, Ashley, you're speaking for all of Gen Z. And you say, well, you know, we're not a monolithic community. There's so much diversity within the Gen Z community. So you have extra work to do, because you have to talk to all of these different groups, just like you would any other community, and meet them where they are. So I try to do that. I tell my staff, I want to listen. To bring me your ideas. Let's brainstorm. I want to hear, and don't do the talking points. Just talk to me about how you're feeling, how you're living, what you're hearing. Because I'm not going to the same club that you're going to, right? But I still want to know, because it's going to inform me how to talk the right way, how to listen the right way, how to take myself out of it, and how to let you lead. And I think when we talk about the next generation, we have to be thinking about how to bring folks along with us, but also give them the space in that journey to still experiment with who they are without expecting people to do it exactly how we would do it when we were that age.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Love to hear it. I'm like, this is just like music to my ears. So speaking of issues that are really important to members of Gen Z, one thing that's obviously on the ballot right now is reproductive freedom and reproductive rights. And so what do you believe are the necessary steps beyond just electing Vice President Kamala Harris? And like, yes, this is nonpartisan, but y'all know where I stand. But like beyond that, what steps you believe are necessary to protect these rights for future generations? What do we really need to be advocating for?
Well, we certainly need to elect her. And one of the reasons is because the next president will have the opportunity to appoint 3 new justices to the Supreme Court. So if you think that this last batch has gone sideways, you don't want someone like a Donald Trump to be responsible for 3 new ones, because he will find someone even worse than Clarence Thomas, who is young and who will be able to be on that Supreme Court for a very long time. Okay, that was my little vent because he gives me the heebie-jeebies. But
I mean,
what
ugh.
we should be I don't want to talk about him because he irritates my soul. But one of the things is young people should be looking at their ballot. And some of you will be having ballot initiatives that you're voting on because of the state you're in that will codify abortion rights and access to abortion care. That's very important. That is something that you should be doing. You should be connecting with your state representatives to figure out what are they doing if you're in a state where you can do that, where you have folks who care about abortion care, what steps are they taking to make sure that this kind of access can be funded? And it's not just abortion care, it's reproductive health care. Are you trying to have a baby? Do you need IVF or other kinds of fertility treatment? Maybe you're having challenges with your your private parts or, cancers, breast cancer, just challenges in the reproductive space. Do you live in a state where those things are being protected and they're also being funded? What's happening with your Planned Parenthood? Do you have that in your state? I'm on the board of Planned Parenthood Los Angeles, and we're having so many conversations about Planned Parenthoods that are in trouble, but then the demand for abortion care and reproductive health care going up, and how do those things get funded? And then are you a queer woman? Are you, a Latina woman? Are you African American? Are you AAPI? And what kind of challenges are you having that are culturally specific? We are hearing that breast cancer is on the rise for our Asian sisters. So is that something that impacts you? If it is, how can you get more information? What organizations are out there? And then things like doula care and midwifery, that's on the rise. I was born at home on the kitchen table. So I believe that folks should have options outside of the traditional hospital. Is that being funded in your state? And then healthcare for you, but then also healthcare for your elders. Because I don't know about you, but I am totally afraid of my mom and my dad, getting to the point where they need me to take care of them every single day. And do they live in a state where that can afford to happen? Or are we going to be stressed out and in economic debt trying to make all of those things happen? So reproductive care actually is also about all that, because then your mental health comes into question, and then that can impact your ability to be fertile or just have a healthy body. So all of those things I think are in the mix when we talk about reproductive care. And then also young people going to college. I didn't realize this, but there are so many young women who say, I want to go to this school, but I don't want to go to that state to go to school because now abortion is illegal in that state. So where can I go where I can get an education that I want? And also, if I need reproductive health care, I'm in a state that sees me as a woman and will help me.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note. I just kept hearing when you mentioned funding, I think a lot of times we're talking now about okay, we don't want our reproductive rights taken away, but the reproductive rights that we have right now, a lot of times come down to funding and who's going to be funding it and making sure that you're electing people who understand the importance of that, so that you can have the financial resources put into places like Planned Parenthood. So I think it's really important to note that it's not just okay, on a basic level, your reproductive rights will be taken care of if you vote for this one thing. But is that person going to then say, actually, I'm going to put this line item to go there instead. So we're going to just remove the funding from the conversation. So I think it's really, really important for fellow Gen Zers to note that, again, as we were talking about, the government process in the earlier part, yeah, that is something that can happen depending on who's in charge. So like our representative that we're talking to right now might be able to say, actually, I'm going to try to do my best to make sure that we allocate funds here, and I work with these people, local, state, federal, whatever, to make sure that these people understand the importance of this financial decision. But like somebody else may not feel that way. And then you look up and now you still have the right technically, but you have no Planned Parenthood because no one's paying for it.
Correct. And so at the federal level, we have something called the Hyde Amendment. So no federal funds can be used to pay for abortion care. So all of these organizations that help you have to get money from someplace other than the federal government. Now, they may also help you with general reproductive care that can be funded. We had a bill on the House side, the Democrats did, that said we're going to codify IVF treatment as protected. Not one Republican, even women who've used IVF, not one Republican signed on to that bill so that we can talk about it. It's so crazy. And they will have ads. I'm looking at someone in California running for re-election, a Republican, and she said, I support IVF. I used IVF to have a baby. So I went and I pulled up the bill and I was like, yeah, boo, but you didn't sign it so that
you voted nay.
Correct. Then on the Senate side, the Republicans blocked the bill that would allow it to come up on the Senate side. So we also have to be very clear about those folks that are lying to us because they're afraid of women and men who are thinking about abortion care. And then also, not every hospital is created equal. So we have this situation where there are hospitals that cost a lot of money to keep them open. A lot of them are being sold to, I'm just going to say it, to the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has a very prescribed, and strict idea about what kind of care they will support. And so those hospitals don't offer that kind of care. And so if you live in a community where that's the only hospital available to you, that becomes problematic too. But those decisions are decided at the state level, which is why your state representatives are very important. And you should be making sure that they are not supporting state laws that allow those kinds of things to happen.
Yeah. Absolutely. Shifting gears really quickly to our hair, because I know that you worked on the Crown Act, and I'd love to know if you can just give people a quick overview of what that act entails and why you believe that legislation addressing hair discrimination is important. As an actress in Hollywood, I cannot tell you the horror stories I've had with my hair. So I was very, very, very excited to hear about this act, and I'd just love for you to walk us through it as we're both here in two different versions of natural hair today. Mine, I don't know what it's doing. Yours looks beautiful, but it's all natural, it's all ours, and it should be protected. And we shouldn't be able to be discriminated against for it. So, yeah.
And that's actually what the bill says. The bill says that you cannot be discriminated against for rocking your natural hair in the workplace. And natural can be locks, it can be afro, it can be braids, it can just be explosion. It can be curly waves. We know that men and women, Black men and women, have been discriminated against. How many videos do we remember watching where the young man who was playing a sport had to have his locks cut off, right? Or how many videos have we seen of women who were told they had to change their hairstyle if they could compete or if they could be part of a particular workforce? And so this bill, passed into law in a number of states, we're trying to get it done at the federal level, says that's against the law to do. So when I first ran for office, I had to, put my face on a couple of mail pieces. And I actually remember talking to people who said, if you're going to run, make sure you press your hair, because I don't know if you can win if you have a mail piece with your natural hair out. I don't think that's accepted. And so many other women that I've talked to have shared those same stories. So people like Holly Mitchell, people like Stacey Abrams, women who rock their natural hair as elected officials, they should actually be revered. People like Barbara Lee, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. And look at your hair, how beautiful it is. Look, and it's so expressive. And it's actually so common in so many other countries and other cultures. And so why are we forcing Black women and Black men to be contained in a box that mainstream has decided is okay? So the Crown Act says we're not going to do it like that anymore. We're going to rock our natural hair. We're going to buy as much product as we can. We're going to try and get these curls under control and let them explode and be beautiful.
Amazing. And I mean, it just makes me think about when I was in middle school. I went to school in the Valley, and I was at a private school, a Catholic school actually, and I had a dean tell me one day as I was walking that I basically needed to tame my hair, for lack of a
No
better
way.
term. Yeah, and I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I think about also when it comes down to like the levels of discrimination and like the little things that people can say and how it really impacts people's mental health, and like growing up in a generation where like we have a lot of mental health crises, but like also a lot of awareness about mental health, and just knowing that like, yeah, that shouldn't be able to happen.
Yeah.
Like this grown man should not be able to tell this girl who like clearly my mom sent me to school, so I was fine. Like I was like, she wasn't gonna have me looking too crazy,
Right.
even though like to know that that's some of the conversations that are happening, like that's my own experience. There's so many other people's experiences, and like making sure even on a Hollywood level, and I know that you're deeply ingrained in the entertainment community, that like people are hired who know how to do all types of hair. If you can't do all types of hair, why are you a hairstylist? Like those
Yes.
conversations need to be had. And like, what does this discrimination look like when you show up to set and nobody knows how to do your hair, and
Okay.
this is your job?
So do you think that people get hired who can do all kinds of hair?
No. I I think in the last few years I've seen a shift towards that, and I actually think that social media has a lot to do with that, in the ways that we've been able to be like, this is unacceptable behavior. I think social media can be used for a myriad of ways, but on its best day, it can do stuff like that where the conversation is shifted. So yeah, I've seen a little bit more attention, and I think even in the SAG contract that just came out, granted it was long, I have not fully read it yet, but like to know that like there is an effort to be like, this is not gonna work anymore. Like I shouldn't have to come to set with all these hair products and all this extra makeup and like sit in my trailer and do my own hair. I can't focus on my lines. Like,
Right.
and so yeah, like those things are really important. I think that we need to have more of a push towards it for sure,
And
because
so,
it's a job.
yeah. So are you seeing more people of color in this space, or are you seeing more training for all people to know how to do all kinds of hair?
I think I've actually seen a mixture of both, and it really depends on which state I'm in. Like when I was shooting in Atlanta, most of the hairstylists down there were black anyways,
Right.
so because of the black population. So like, but in LA, I think the vibes are a little different, and there's a it's like a, hey, we're gonna just train you now.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna try to do this
Yeah.
the right way. But I haven't seen like an influx of black hairstylists. Even though on my last shoot, I will say the hairstylist was black and she was doing everybody's hair.
Yeah.
So like it's like it's both and. But again, if you can do one hair type, do them all. Like
Yeah.
figure it out. But yeah, I think that there needs to be some shift there for sure.
Well, there needs to be a whole bunch of training in my mind, because there's so much product out there for natural
Mhm.
hair that even someone who has it doesn't know how to navigate that space. So you
I hardly
really
do
want
any given day.
yeah. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like everybody should be trained on how to be able to be helpful so that someone is looking their best selves when they're on screen or when they're doing their job.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a now non-scripted question that I just have. So I've been doing, I was like, we're going to go a little off script. It's nothing too crazy. So my film school brain is on, and I have been learning a lot about tax rebates and different things in terms of like why we're shooting and not in LA anymore, and like what it looks like for all of us. I know that there's now a soundstage credit to try to get people back to LA. And like, I would just love to know like what your involvement is in that, and like the discussions being had to bring the industry back home, for lack of a better term, just because like when you look at the money, a lot of other places seem to be a lot cheaper to shoot than LA. But like a lot of us live here, so we're all just flying, spending all our resources in these other spaces, which is great for those communities. But like, I'm sure you have thoughts.
You're gonna make me put some bourbon in my coffee. Okay, this is crazy. Yes. Oh, I'm starting an entertainment caucus to focus on this and other issues, especially content creation and ownership of content. IP is very important to me, but then also the formulas that are required for production to happen. People say, oh, it's COVID and it was the strike, but it's the rising cost of living in Los Angeles and the cost of actually doing productions that are driving folks out of California. So when you have a show for 7 seasons that's filming in another state, I get very upset about that because it's the crew and it's the actors, but then also it's the ancillary businesses like the tailors and the florists and the craft services that are not going to travel, that are here without work. So
Right.
how do we lower the cost of production? How do we share the cost of doing it equitably? How are we defining what a production is? And how do we look at the impact that streaming has had on production? All
Yeah.
of those things are things that are incredibly interesting to me. And then the role that AI is playing and will continue to
Right.
play. And then what the role that algorithms play in how formulas are decided and costs are shared. Because I know that we're losing jobs in California.
Yeah.
We're losing them to Georgia, but we're also losing them to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So it's a
Vancouver.
national
We're
issue.
gone.
Yes, it is a
Yeah.
national issue. Barbie wasn't filmed here. So those things are things that I am thinking about all the time. We need to bring production back. We need to make it so that folks can live in their city and work in their city. And then we
Yeah.
also need to make sure that there's equitable sharing of the profits. Because we know that if, $1 million is being made, how much of those $1 million are going into the hands of Black and Brown creators?
Say that. Yeah.
This industry will be an $800 billion industry in about 5 or 6 years. How much of that is our community seeing? Because Lord knows folks are taking our content. They're
Absolutely.
using our creators to influence whatever they're putting on, their platform. So are our people getting their share? I'm very interested in digging deeper into those issues.
We could have a whole episode just about that. I'm gonna spare everybody else from all of my nerdy questions, but I think one, it's obviously important to know that while I think a lot of times we know that entertainment is what it is, entertainment, these are people's livelihoods. I'm literally in film school and they're like, are you going to be able to work in LA? TBD, as you're in LA. So it's to know that that is a part of the conversation. And yes, there's reproductive rights, gun legislation, all these different things. But in terms of being in California and also just being in this entertainment industry, this is a really important issue.
Jobs.
Yeah, it is absolutely jobs.
So when you're filming in Atlanta, you're paying taxes there. You're paying state taxes here, but when you're buying something, sales tax, all of that is going to that state. We need that money here. Then if you're renting a place, that money is going there. We now have studios that are empty because it costs too much for a production to rent that space. So we have to have a real conversation about making these studio lots where folks can film and rent, more affordable for all kinds of productions.
Absolutely. Okay, love this. Basically, I'm very happy I'm in your district because the vibes are vibing. So, well, speaking of, you mentioned content creators. I only have a few more questions. Well, I have many, but I'll ask a few more.
Okay.
Content creators, what advice would you give to, Gen Z activists who are looking to leverage these platforms for political engagement? We saw what the DNC did. Obviously, we brought in a lot of money for the DNC by use of our platforms, and happy to do it. But I know that there's a lot of conversation now about how are we leveraging these voices, and are there ways that you think that hey, if you really care about this issue, if you communicated this in this fashion, you might get more traction with actually getting things done in your own district, etc.
I think don't give away all your stuff for free. Own it, right? Because your content is incredibly important and it's unique to you. I think it's also important to figure out who your base is and why they are connecting to you. What part of your authentic voice is the one that's resonating, and then how to protect that, and also stay true to it with the information that you're sharing, and then also figure out who could use your help. Hey, I like this business. I love going to get their coffee. They have a great mission. They need some help, so how can I work with them? It's a values-based relationship to talk about, and I'm just using this as an example, but to talk about the things that both of us care about because I know my audience would care about. this. And it will probably go into things far deeper than the kind of coffee that you're drinking, but the role
Yeah.
that this business is playing in the community. Do they hire folks who are formerly incarcerated? Do they help hire folks that used to be in the foster youth community? Do they have an open mic space where folks can come? Is it a safe place for the LGBTQ community? Those are very small, localized ways that I think creators can use their voice to build community.
That's really, really important. And this is, I guess, in its own way, a content creation platform. So it's nice to I'm trying to use this platform in that same way. And so I know I have so many influencer peers who are on the same wavelength. And like, even now, there's people who have never used their platforms before in a political capacity, but there's just too much on the line. So it's nice to see us all together. But like, there's a lot. And there's like, I feel like legislation that needs to come out about content creation in the future. Like there are so many things. Like we need to be a protected class in the workforce. So that's a whole separate thing. I would like for us to look ahead really quickly in terms of what you see as the most significant challenges and opportunities for Gen Z in shaping the future of American politics.
I think the biggest challenge is I think people are scared that we're in an existential moment right now, and folks want to know, am I going to be here? Like, am I going to be on this planet? And so how do we push past that fear? And I think the opportunity that's there is to acknowledge that these fears are very real. Gen Zers are totally afraid of the cost of living, you know, how much it costs just to exist. And do they even have an opportunity to experiment with who they are, you know? Or is every day a grind to survive? And like, what are you getting out of the grind? So how do you acknowledge that? And acknowledge our role in making some of that a reality. And then the opportunity comes in just sharing those stories and making those connections so that folks can find some hope. There's a larger community out there that's feeling the same way. And if you continue to dig, you'll probably see that it's intergenerational. You know, there's seniors that are feeling the same way, and their hope is in the younger generation. So how do we build those connections? And I think so many of us are really invested and interested in Gen Zers being the loudest voices in the room, because you're so expressive and vulnerable and a little crazy, but I kind of like it. And so we want some more of it because we laugh and then we're thinking. And then use that to create choice, the choice for the kind of world you want to live in. And we all can play a role in making sure that the choices we have are good choices. So I hope that wasn't too esoteric.
No, I think it was really great. And I have one more question, and then I have a question really quickly from a member of Gen Z who has proposed a question to you. So I'll play that really quickly, and it'll be pretty brief. But the last question, I guess I would ask you, in terms of Gen Z in the world we're looking at, is that a lot of people now, I mean, we look at Congressman Maxwell Frost, and like we're seeing a shift for all of us wanting to kind of get engaged in the political sphere in a different way. And if you have any advice for those who are just like, where do I start? Like, is it starting by interning in your office? Like, where do you begin? Where do you end? Like, how for those who want to get involved in this space, what they should be doing? What would you advise as a Congresswoman?
I would say get out of your comfort zone and visit a whole bunch of other people that you wouldn't normally go to. You're like, that person is whack. I'm not feeling them. Have a cocktail and then go to that event and see. You never know. You might meet somebody. So get out of the comfort zone. You can intern. You can do content creation collabs. You can get on a campaign. You can help with writing. You can actually help just by inviting folks that you like into the spaces where you are so that they can get connected to your group. So there are traditional and non-traditional ways that folks can get connected. But, you know, I see people, if I see a young person at like more than 3 events, I'm like, I need to know you. So it kind of goes both ways, right? You're like, I've seen that person at a couple of events. Maybe I need to know her. She might be interesting. So those are simple ways. Those are simple ways.
Hello, my name is Malia. I am 20 years old and I am a junior at Tennessee State University, a historically black college. And my question to you is, I was wondering how you would encourage young minorities to go out and vote in this upcoming election, especially considering the fact that young minorities and Gen Z have grown up in the Trump administration, and seeing the toll that is taken on our younger generation. How would you encourage people who feel very pessimistic about politics to go out and vote and have hope?
Well, Malia, thank you for the question. I am going to say that the one thing that every single person has, regardless of age, race, gender, or zip code, is their right to vote. And it is a powerful thing. So if you don't vote, you are giving away your power probably to someone who doesn't deserve it. And the only way that we can make our country better, our communities better, our future better is by voting. There are races that have been won by 1 vote or 10 votes or 100 votes. The last presidential election was won by 40,000 votes in a country of 350 million people. So your vote does matter. Think about that when you're going into the poll, the voting booth, and also vote across down the entire ballot. It's not just about the presidency, but it is about all of the other groups and people who can support that person. We don't need 4 more years of a Donald Trump. He's deranged. He is treasonous. He wants to use this government to go against people who don't do exactly what he tells them to do. And he is out to take away the rest of our rights, so many of which have already been compromised. The right to vote is being suppressed because of him. Women's rights are being suppressed because of him. The LGBTQ's rights are being suppressed because of him. We talk about the cost of living. He wants to put a 20% sales tax across this country. So if you think your gas costs too much now, what do you think it will cost if you tack on 20% more to its charge? I know you might be feeling disaffected. Sometimes I'm upset too, but I remember that the one thing we all have, the one powerful tool we all have, is our right and our ability to vote. So don't give it up, Malia. I'm counting on you.
Oh, amazing. This was so great. I am going to just say thank you again for coming on to Push the Next Generation, Congresswoman. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. And this was just really special. And I think it's really great for Gen Z to know that, like, we do have people in government who are looking out for our best interests. So thank you for doing so.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure. I hope you invite me back. And if I can just say,
absolutely.
I was in Brazil on a delegation, and I was in a room with a lot of my elders from Brazil. And they talked about Jesse Jackson and how he came there and inspired them and worked with them to fight for their rights, to unionize, to be able to have jobs, to be seen in a country that really still didn't recognize Afro-descendants. And so I share that because every generation is connected to the next one, in front and behind us. And it's those generations on either side of us that work with us to bring hope to the country and to our communities. And I was able to see it in real time with elders far older than myself. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity to be on this podcast with you so that maybe I can sort of pay it forward the way I saw it being paid to me when I was in that meeting in Brazil.
Oh, amazing. Well, this was just wonderful. I'm feeling all of the nice and fuzzies. Thank you so much again, Congresswoman.
What a moment. If you want to submit a question to our guests, DM at Push the Next Generation Pod for a chance to make it onto future episodes. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Push the Next Generation, recommend it to a friend, follow on socials at Push the Next Generation Pod, and just thank you so much for watching and listening. See you next week on Push the Next Generation. In the meantime, be easy with yourselves. This is Ashley Jackson, signing off.